Hello, all benders and non-benders, and welcome back to Avatar Generations. Today, we are talking about the pirate queen herself from the Kyoshi timeline, Tagaka. I believe that is the right pronunciation, if I'm remembering correctly, from the official video that the developers put out. I hope I've got that right. So she is the Fifth Nation pirate queen. She is a Fifth Nation character, as well as a pirate and a rebel. And she does some very interesting things that we are going to talk about right here, right now. We're going to talk about how she seems to have a slightly deceiving but very specific role that can be effective when properly enabled. So, let's talk about her basic glacial waves. Deals splash damage to all enemies, so it is an AoE. Attack ignores damage reduction. And she gains a random defensive buff for each pirate faction ally on the caster's team. Now, splash damage means that if there is a water element on the enemy, this will inflict the water element on another enemy. Basically, it is quite literally splashing that water onto other enemies. The interesting thing with this is that being that it's an AoE, if all of your enemies have the water element, this can, some pun slightly intended, snowball into a lot of water debuffs being applied on the enemy in the right circumstances. Additionally, if she has any pirate faction allies, she will gain some defensive buffs. You're going to see this trend very persistently, how she is very much dependent on who she's in a team with. This basic also does have some skill mastery effects. We'll get to that in just a second here, but we're going to look at her advanced Marquis of the Sea. Deals 3 hits of fierce damage, which ignores damage reduction, to all enemies, so 3 hits, AoE hit. And each hit has a 35% chance to increase the rank of any water element effects by 1 for each hit. And then if there's any rebel factions on her team, which usually goes hand in hand with pirate factions, she gains a random offensive buff. One thing to note, these random buffs do count her. So even if she's the only pirate or rebel on the team, she will still get a buff, just not as many as she would normally if she was in a team with her fellows. So what this basically means is that each of the 3 hits can increase an already existing water element to rank 2 or rank 3, of course, hoping you beat the accuracy resistance check. It's kind of something to keep in mind there. And then her passive, very simple but potentially powerful, grants skill nullified to all allies when any enemy is inflicted with a rank 3 water element. This does not specify that she has to be the one inflicting it. Basically, if they get that rank 3 water element, she gives skill nullified to everybody, which means that they will dodge the next hit. So an interesting thing there, basically, her kit screams 2 things. It screams synergy with her factions, specifically Pirate and Rebels, and it screams water element debuffs. We're going to see that even more when we look at her mastery levels here. At mastery level 2, she heals each ally based on her attack stat and heals pirate and rebel factions an additional amount. What this seems to be, from my brief testing, it basically heals everybody for 1 instance, and then heals 1 more time for if you're a pirate, and then heals 1 more time if you're a rebel. So pirate and rebel factions are going to get healed 3 times for that healing amount. Very interesting because it does turn her into a very interesting support character. Looking at her mastery level 3, she does grant some increased attack or defense to all pirate or rebel faction allies, not including herself for 1 turn whenever she uses her basic. So basically increasing not only their attack, but also their bulk. And then mastery level 4 here, deal 50% increased damage to targets that are frozen. So, some very interesting things here, some very interesting things to talk about. Honestly, the fact that she's an offensive character is a little bit deceiving. I personally think she feels a whole lot more like a mind character because she does not hit very hard in my testing. Now, I would love to be corrected wrong if somebody has done some more extensive testing with her, if somebody knows kind of the tricks to make her work. I think I have a few tricks that I will talk about in a second here. But she strikes me as more of a mind character who doesn't do as much in the way of damage and focuses more on getting those debuffs out, but we'll talk more about that in just a second. Looking at her arts, I personally think that what you want to do is jack up her speed. Get her as much speed as humanly possible so that she's using her AoE moves as much as possible and getting as many water element debuffs as possible. Also, I have her in here with just a little bit of lifesteal. I feel like that way, if she's getting hit by AoEs, you'll probably put her in the back line. This will just help her keep herself nice and healthy. Now, as far as the supports go, if you're building a team around her and around fellow waterbenders, I've got to give a special shout out here to the Koala Otter. At maximum tier, this will increase your accuracy of all water element heroes by 50%. For her to work properly, I feel like this is your best bet. I feel like this is exactly what you need to make sure those water elements are sticking. However, a maxed out Snow Leopard Caribou, which is a very free-to-play friendly one, as you do get him from the account level ups, is also exceptional because it does increase your speed by 20% when you're in battle. So something to keep in mind there. My first pick would be Koala Otter, followed very closely by the Snow Leopard Caribou. Now, her Relic. We're going to talk about a few things here on how she works and the best way to make her function. Of course, probably her best in slot is going to be her 5-star Relic, but that is a rare chance that you'll get that, and I didn't even get one personally. If I'm remembering correctly, her cutter actually kind of gives her a little help with inflicting those water elements, but that is a very premium option. We're going to talk about some 4-star options here. In the current event, we have the Frozen Pledge. This thing is interesting because it has a 75% chance to inflict a maximum tier, 75% chance to inflict a rank 3 water element on a random enemy for 2 turns when the caster defeats an enemy, which also ignores resistance. Basically, if Tagaka puts an enemy down, it will inflict a rank 3 element with 75% chance of that happening on an enemy. This will trigger her passive, which grants skill nullify to all allies. So you can kind of see the synergy there. As long as she is sneaking out a kill every now and then, she can do some very cool stuff with this. This also works on combos. If she is being used in a combo and she's the one who gets the final blow, that can still trigger this. Very important to keep in mind there. Now, this does require kills. Very high risk, but very high reward. If you want to go for a slightly more user-friendly option, the Ice Totem is also very good. Basically, this has a 60% chance to inflict the water element on a random enemy for 1 turn at the start of her turn, which can play very well with her abilities and kind of gives her a little bit of self-sufficiency with that water element. It's very situational which one is better, the Ice Totem or the Frozen Pledge. That one is kind of up to you. Additionally, we do have the Pirate Man's Relic here that is on his current banner. You'll notice I do have a few copies here, and I have a reason for that, and I'll get to that in just a second here. But this is another very good option for her, as it does permanently reduce her skill cooldown by 1 and can increase her turn bar by a little bit if she's in a combo. Other options here, you've got some offensive options here. Panda Lily really wouldn't recommend. Frankly, these 3 here, the Ice Totem, Call to Freedom, and then the Frozen Pledge, are going to be your best options. Pretty much bar none. If you're really hurting, you can use the Whale Tooth Blade. It's not bad. The Blade of Tagaka, which is kind of funny because it's her namesake, but I don't think I would really recommend it for her. The reason I say that is it does require you to actually inflict negative states, and not counting the freezes from the occasional rank 3 element, she doesn't actually inflict negative states herself, so I can't really recommend this as much more than a stat stick. So yeah, that is her kit. Here's the thing. Like I said, she feels like she's more of a mind character than an offense character, because pure damage-wise, I was not blown away. I feel like her AoEs on their own really don't do a lot of damage. Maybe I'm missing something, and I would love to hear in the comments if I am, but I really don't feel like they do a lot on their own. However, her kit is very heavily alluding to this. Pirate Rebel, Pirate Faction, Rebel Faction. I think her place is PvE teams with one pirate in particular, the man whose name is the bane of my existence, the Pirate Man. We've talked about him before, and I did not exactly give him glowing praise. I basically described him as a solid waterbender tank, which is very true. However, I think this man is the bread to Tagaka's butter. Reason I say that, if you get this covering stance, it turns his basic into waterbending damage AoE, meaning that he can apply the water element to everybody. If you just read her kit, that's very important. Her basic does splash damage. Her advanced can increase the rank of all water elements. These two are meant to work together. If you have Pirate Queen Tagaka, you need this guy for her to function. Because working together, they can start a, like again, pun intended here, they can start a waterfall of water debuffs on the enemy that can heavily lower their speed and basically incapacitate them. Long enough for one of your offensive characters, someone on the team to do more damage, to actually get in there and do some damage. If I were to build a team with her, and you'll notice I got a couple copies of this guy because I wanted to get his covering stance to 2 turns, I am going to revisit the Pirate Faction here, with Pirate Man here, the Pirate Queen, and then also Kiwak, and the Firebender Pirate here. I want to put a team together with just them and test them out in some higher level PvE stuff. I don't really foresee her being terribly practical in PvP, but I don't think that is her purpose. Unless the meta does a massive shift, I think her purpose is to be a water debuff driver to devastate PvE content. Also, I do want to test her out with this pirate as well. I know my OCD does scream at me a little bit when I use Kiwak and not the 5th Nation pirate, because Kiwak is actually Avatar Aang timeline and not a 5th Nation. But there is no denying that Kiwak is exceptionally good, and Kiwak is also a pirate and a rebel, so she does play very well with Tagaka. So that is my opinion of her, a very specific role as a water element driver, but if you can get that going, if you can kind of figure out your groove, I think she can be extremely effective in that role. But that is about all we have for today. If you do have Pirate Queen Tagaka, if you've used her at all, let me know what you think of her down in the comments below. Also, we have had some massive subscriber growth since the character tier list. Thank you so much for that. It means the actual world to me. We are ever close to the 1,000 subscriber mark, so if you can help me reach that and subscribe down below, I would greatly appreciate it. So that is all we have for today. We shall see you next time. Have a good one.